Hey guys, I want to talk about two things today basically. Selective involvement in our world and something I think I've heard the term somewhere. It's nature deficit disorder. Right now we're kind of in a climate of fighting and contention and anger, and you can actually become mentally addicted to that. This perpetual cycle of rage and frustration, and you just can't get out of it. It feels like you've got to be in the fight. And people make you feel guilty if you're not in it. They say, you've got to have a say. You've got to do it. You're not a good citizen if you don't get in there and do something. And then, there's a mental pollution from social media. It's just nothing but mental pollution. And television, based television. It is so bad today. But they're life killers. You need to really practice some emotional and mental self-defense and unplug from all that. It's just counterproductive to real life. I've said before plenty of times, and have videos about this, it's messing with my intentional solitude, something I try to hold on to and keep for myself and hold close. You have to, intentionally means you choose it, you covet it, you cultivate it. I've seen a lot of leaving society blogs and videos. I'm leaving society to move to the wilderness, or I'm leaving society and I'm going to live here, and I'm going to cut myself off from everything. And what's interesting is the comments in the sections of the videos. I always read the comments, and some of the comments, after a while, some of them I can't stand to read them, but I get the sense that people really romanticize homesteading, living off-grid, leaving society. They, on Facebook, they used to post this picture of this cabin in the middle of the woods that says, "Would you live here? Would you cut off your cell phone and everything and go live here forever?" And everybody's going, yeah, I would. And you don't just live there with no income. I mean, you've got to be able to support yourself, because nobody can be 100% self-sufficient in today's world anymore. I think you can get close, but you can't really get there 100%. Uncle Sam wants that connection. But you can't. They romanticize homesteading, for example, to where it turns into this insane, crazy fantasy. And when the reality hits, if they actually try it and the reality of it hits, if they weren't honest with themselves before they got into it and they just went with the fantasy, most people get out of it really quick. It is sweaty, it's dirty, it's painful at times, it's frustrating, it's daily, it's never ending. You don't get to pick and choose when you do things. You have to go with the seasons, you have to go with the flow. If you have animals, you don't get to choose when you feed your animals. They have to be fed and watered on a regular basis, or you're going to end up with a bunch of sick animals. You've got to see to their pest problems, lice, mites. You've got to worm them. There's a lot of things that go with, and a cow is not like a goat, it's not like a chicken. You've got to learn all the differences and how to care for each individual type of animal, each species of animal. So, they depend on you, and there are time limits for things, and you can't do it when you feel like it. It's not romantic to get up early in the morning to go milk your cow. It just isn't. It's a lot of bad, and when you've got a bad knee like I do right now, getting up and down to do that is extremely painful. Now I don't milk a cow because I know my limitations, but it runs you. You don't run your homestead. It runs you pretty much. There's only so much you can control. But I think a lot of people today who've been living in cities and suburbs and fantasize this, I really think they've got what I call nature deficit disorder. And if they're always angry and perpetually fighting with people, I think a little nature therapy might be very helpful. maybe not jumping into a homestead necessarily, even though I think in the future that may be critical to do if you're going to survive at all. But people need to reconnect. As a realtor, I encountered some odd people. Even living in the suburbs, before I even had an idea to have a homestead, even though I grew up, around a farm, I encountered some clients that had some strange requests. I had one woman who wanted a house with no trees because she was afraid they would fall on her. I had another woman who didn't want any trees because she didn't want the birds in the trees singing and waking her up in the morning. What? That's one of the most wonderful joys of my life, is hearing the birds singing in the morning, hearing the whippoorwills at night sometimes. I didn't hear any this summer. That was sad for me. But these people are so out of touch. They are so cityfied and they're so clued into things that are artificial that they don't even have they have no affinity for nature anymore at all. But when you do that, when you finally get in tune with something, when you start homesteading, you sort of become aware, more and more aware than ever. You probably knew it already, but food is seasonal. There are a lot of things that are seasonal. We're in a society now where everything is there, well, not right now because supply chains are bad. And the stuff that's in the store sometimes is not that good. It's picked too early or it's left on the shelves too long. But the food is seasonal, and if you eat seasonally, eat things in season, and if you can only grow things in season. If you're growing them yourself, you can only grow things that grow in the season that they grow, and that's when you eat them, or you preserve them to eat them out of season. So you learn to can, or you learn to freeze dry, or whatever or dehydrate, or whatever you learn to do to preserve them. But you learn to eat seasonally. You learn that everything is seasonal. Things are not, you can have an orange in the middle of winter, unless it's imported from some other place that can grow it year-round. So people are just so out of touch. People need some stress relief. If you go out on a quiet night, if you live anywhere that's quiet at night, if you don't drive there, drive out a little ways. Drive out into a little more rural area. And open your car windows, or step out of your car, don't trespass, and stand there, close your eyes, and breathe deeply. Breathe slowly in and out. In with your nose, out with your mouth. Listen to your breath going in and out, and then listen. Listen out and hear what's around you. Hear only your breathing and what you can hear. You'll hear night birds, you'll hear crickets probably if it's summer. You might hear an owl, you might hear a dove, a mourning dove. I came across a video the other day. It was a sound effects thing on my Kindle, and it says owl at night. And I listened to it. It wasn't an owl at all. It was a mourning dove. They don't know the difference between an owl and a mourning dove. But and also when you're away from the city, you can see the stars. You can actually see the stars on a clear night. You can see billions of stars above your head. In the city, you can't because there's light pollution. It will revitalize you if you get a little nature therapy and get more in touch with the real world. That to me is the real world. Now, I wanted to recommend a book to you. Anybody who's thinking about homesteading and hasn't done it yet, or wants a little inspiration for the hard work that you're in the middle of, there's a book I read a few years ago called The Dirty Life by Kristen Kimball, right here. Awesome book. She's since written one I have not read called, what's it called? Good Husbandry. I haven't read that yet. But I've read and reread this book. She was a New York reporter going to, bar hopping, New York reporter, you know, just really what you think of as a young New York person. And she went to interview a young farmer guy. Ended up falling in love with the guy, ended up eventually marrying him, and together they now run a CSA, Community Sponsored Agriculture, or Community Supported Agriculture, whichever you want to call it, where they have, on a 500-acre farm in Lake Champlain, New York, where they, people have subscriptions to their, vegetables. Once a week they'll come and get whatever's in season. And they pay for these subscriptions, these food subscriptions. But she was a vegetarian. It took like took a New York minute for her to start eating sausage. So this book, The Dirty Life, is such a good book. It's such a good book. It really tells you the highs, the lows, the triumphs, what happens and how they fix it. A city girl going to a very rural, very hard life, and they eventually have 2 children, so it's an excellent book. I mean, seriously, you got to read The Dirty Life. A memoir of farming, food, and love. Excellent, excellent book. There are even some recipes in here, I think, if I remember correctly. Are there some recipes in here? Yeah, in the very back there's a few recipes, actually. But that is an excellent book, and I haven't read her book, Good Husbandry, but I think I'm going to try to find that. I think you can get it on for Kindle, ebook for Kindle, or you can get an audiobook too. I think the audiobook is free. But even though you may decide that you don't want to live that hard life, what you may want to do is think about what's going on right now in the world. Russia is posturing. The United Arab Emirates and Israel have reached sort of an agreement to talk, historic, and Russia's not happy with that. A lot of people aren't happy about that over there, and there's rumblings of war right now. What happens when you can't get any food? You'll wish you'd started a little plot in your backyard or found you a little piece of land somewhere you could afford. You may have to do this to survive. This may be a have-to situation. And you don't really know, because right now all the news reporters, the mainstream media, it's nothing but lies, fabrications, and agendas, and you can't, it's hard to filter out what is really the truth in any of that. I've seen, they'll take a story about the president and they'll see 15 different media outlets have the same story. Oh, he did this, he did this, he did this, all saying the same thing. And when I look at what he actually did and look at his own words, big limb fell, look at his own words, he didn't do it at all. So my point in saying that, it's nothing to do with the president per se, but what it is you don't know what's true and what's not true. And what in warning about when to close your own borders and when to be on high alert may be too late for you. So you may not get the real news until it's too late in the game for you to really act. And I think acting now is prudent. I just heard that New Zealand is taking all new CV-19 cases and taking them out of their homes forcibly and putting them in quarantine centers. Yes, you can look that article up. It was on Full Spectrum Survival, and there are articles about that. They are going to, I guess it's stage 3 or whatever they call it. What? Have you ever heard of anyone who's come out of a quarantine center? Sounds remarkably like FEMA camps, but I haven't heard anybody coming out of one who went into one. I hope to God that doesn't happen here, but what I'm saying is we don't know what's going on. But, you know, I kept hearing this line, and you know this line. You may not know where it comes from. Let me take a little bit of my lavender honey tea here. There's a line. Remember that line that says, if you can keep your head about you and all others are losing theirs? Well, that's only the first line of a poem by Rudyard Kipling called If. And I thought, you know, I need to reread that poem. I know I've read it sometime, but I thought, I'm going to look that up. Oh my goodness, it's really a good thing for where we are now. And I want to read this to you, and I know I don't usually do that, but it says, if you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. See, I never remember that part. If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. If you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good or talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools, if you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginnings and never breathe a word about your loss, if you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there's nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and which is more, you'll be a man, my son. That is the whole poem from If You Can Keep Your Head When All About You Are Losing Theirs, and I did not remember that whole thing. When all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. Did you remember that part? I didn't remember that part. But that is an awesome poem called If. Anyway, The Dirty Life by Kristen Kimball. Well worth a read or two. And her second book, Good Husbandry, which I'm sure will be just as good as this one. So, that's all I got to say today, and we will catch y'all later. I got my materials delivered for most everything to do with the lift, and of course, ever since they delivered it yesterday, it's been pouring rain. We won't be able to get anything done for a while. See y'all later. Bye.